All right, so okay, so a basic build order in a 12-2 war: town hall, farm, Rex, farm, smith, rags.
Yep. And then get to 9 peons with your first grunt. You obviously want to scout your neighbor just to make sure there's somebody there. At that point, you can cancel your peace stop. So, I mean, it's rather easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Now, is there any reason why you like to put your Rex there, Smith there?
Just I like to build like this at 2 o'clock because of the way units pop outside of buildings. That like you can do a secondary choke against this first or second building barracks and the tree line right there.
Gotcha.
And then also, your third racks or your lumber mill can go to the right of the racks that just completed. And then you just have three just all in a nice area. Plus, you get a lot more farm space this way.
It's a good way to stop getting towered also. Like those GTs don't reach as much.
Yeah. And so at this point, you would scout and you would see a farm right here. And so a safe spot to scout if you don't want to be scouted is putting your first grunt right there. And so at this point, I would stop peon production entirely and farm production, and then just start massing grunts until I have a six of them.
All right. And so you like to hit when you get 6. For me,
Well, I hit when I have four. Like, I'll start heading there, and then my next two are gonna. If I could rally them, I would rally them. But I would go ahead and start setting up the choke, because when you stop farm production like this, you need to be able to still get the quick level 3, but you have to start throwing grunts away
yeah.
so you don't waste resources and you stay under the food limit. And then eventually at a point you'll be able to, when you hit the food cap, you kind of want to start a second farm whenever you start going level 3.
So
But obviously,
we think about this very similarly. Also, I mean, I do basically the same thing. When I get 4, I want to hit because if you're against a 1 racks, you can start breaking them immediately. If you're
even
against
if
a
there's a
2
tower
rack,
built,
yeah. If you're against a 2 racks that didn't P stop, then you want to go ahead and start killing their grunts immediately so you can get ahead. Which is the whole
yeah.
premise behind this P stop rush is you're gonna have more grunts, more level than they are if they don't P stop.
And not
So
only, it's not necessarily like a do or die thing either. If you do this P-stop rush, it's not like you have to do damage or you're super behind. I mean, you're a little bit behind economically if they never stop building peons, right? But when you start to apply pressure with this, they're forcing themselves to stop building peons. Now they might have two or three more than you at the time you start to apply pressure, but they're going to stop building peons and just double up their grunt production, and it can throw them off their game. They could start forgetting farms. They could forget to go level 3 because they're so concerned with defending their choke point.
yep. And that's a good thing to remember when you're defending P stop versus P stop is you know what's coming because you were gonna do the same thing. And now all your actions are happening at home rather than in someone else's base. So don't forget those
Yeah.
farms. Like once you get close to that unit limit, get that farm up. If you have to rep it, go ahead and do that.
Now there are some simple nuances too, but the difference between being 12 and then being 2. So obviously, you do this P-stop rush and your opponent is 12. The whole reason attacking with your first 4 grunts is because you can set up a choke against the enemy's base right here. And at 12, you can start wailing on their farm, forcing a repair,
Right.
taking away their resources, making them have an uneven amount of wood, so it messes up their farm production or gaining, level 4 or anything like that. And so, I mean, I think it's a bigger priority to choke outside of their base and also to just simply have a contain set up.
Right. It's protecting you and it's doing them harm, which is something you always want to do in War 2 is, cause them to waste resources while you're gaining an advantage back home. So, I mean, right
Pretty
now,
much.
you're sitting at home. You could be making farms, a mill, upgrading, whatever you want to do. He's dealing with an actual threat at his base. And now to get out, he's going to have to try to break 3 versus 3, but his units are going to take hits that your units aren't going to take hits when they're moving into that spot.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
And
you're
now
going to
the damage is random. I mean, grunts can do anywhere from 2 to 9 damage. So I
Yep.
mean, fuck, we've all had those battles where your grunts do nothing but 2 fucking damage every hit.
Those
But
are the worst.
yeah. But yeah, there's I mean, 12 has the disadvantage in that its actual choke point is part of is part of his wall. His farm is right there, so you can do damage that way. And then at 2, it's a little bit different because it's the choke point's a natural tree line choke point, so you don't have to you don't get the advantage of that. It's a lot harder to attack into 2 than it is into 12.
Another thing that people may want to consider is if you are going to do a peace stop, you don't always have to put that farm down where your grunts are sitting. You can do the grunts that form the 5 versus 4 choke, and I see some people doing that with success. Yeah, right there.
Like doing this choking like that right there is especially if it's a peace stop versus a peace stop, right? Like you and your opponent, say you're both doing the same exact thing, you're going to have the same amount of units, the same amount of economy. So neither of you are at an advantage or disadvantage. Well, I mean, at that point, it depends on if you're in a 2-on-2 or a big game or whatever, whose ally is making the difference at that point, which, especially I've noticed between me and you, who ends up winning the 12-2 war becomes, whose ally ends up making more of an impact in the battle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's a good point, having the 5v4 choke. I mean, it's 1 extra grunt, but at the same time, you don't have to worry about that farm taking damage. So that's actually really good, especially in big games.
Yeah, now you don't want to do this when you're in a 3v3 or a 4v4. There's just too many variables, too many grunts that could come your way, and a 5v4 isn't really going to provide you what a 4v3 would do.
And at that point, even setting up the 3v2, which I do a lot, I set up the 3v2 where you put a farm here and a farm there. Well, I guess it would be like that. But yeah, you would put a farm here and a farm there.
Yeah.
That 3v2, I mean, there's less units having to support the choke, so, every unit extra you have behind the choke can help reinforce the choke, buys you a lot of time, especially when you're peace stopping like this. You're going to be late to teching to tier 3 and getting bloodlust, so and it puts you more in range, deeper in range of the cannon tower, so the cannon can actually have more splash damage on the group of 4 units that'll be pulled up in front of those grunts. Just of the build order, I mean, this is pretty much, except for this 5th farm, take away the 5th farm, and that beginning build order is pretty much how you would play out, your basic 12-2 peace stop rush. I mean, it's a solid strategy that, I mean, I think it should always be done, especially in 3v3s, 4v4s especially, because if you have you got 2 people at 12-2 that are on the opposite teams of each other, whoever wins that battle at 12-2 is most oftentimes going to win the entire game, because 12-2 often have the largest impact.
Yep.
And so, it's very important if you're 12-2 in a big game to be able to stay alive. It's not about, putting yourself in an advantage position to, power or tech, because that's not what 12-2 does by making an impact.
So this build order is essentially the same from 12 that it would be from 2, with, a few small differences, and that's just because you can get towered when you're 12. So this is what I was talking about earlier before we started this video, how I'll take this peon here, and I'll just run them to this spot. You can always see if you're being towered there before you drop that second Rax.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's important to note, too, that the vision of a building that's building is a lot smaller than the vision of a unit that can actually that has a sight range. You can see a grunt has a sight range of 4, and a building that's building I think only has a sight range of 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's 1. And you'll notice at the most with that farm when somebody's able to sneak past it.
Yeah.
So again, this first grunt, it's going to go out there. I have 8 peons at this point, and my whole goal is to see if this is hot by the time I get my 9th peon. Okay, I'm going to bring my grunt back. I have 9 peons.
It's important not to lose that first grunt. That puts you at an insane disadvantage. And
Yep.
I mean, anytime somebody loses their first grunt versus me, that means I'm going to go over there and I'm going to break your choke, and I'm going to break your base.
So again, when you're waiting to have your 4 grunts here, you definitely want to start forming a choke. That way if they send to you, they run into 3 that are lined up. So right now you're breaking a choke here, and it's the same thing that we talked about in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Level 2 is going to happen right about now, and I can start level 3, and that's the same build. Now, when you saw me put that peon down there to see if there's towers, you're not going to want to drop a second Rex if you see a tower being formed. There's a few different ways to attack it. I know that Eric here likes to use a CT, play defensively, and live. I'm a little bit different. I'm going to grab all of my peons, bring them out, and I'm going to use the peons to kill the tower and have my grunts fight off any other grunts. Now, if they don't have any grunts in the vicinity, then my grunts can also attack that tower. And you're pretty much going all in to defend the outside of your base, because they're going all in to win that war there. And pretty much, they're forcing you into an all-in the way that I play it, and you generally win that. I would say 95% of the time I'm able to kill the towers out there, unless they have ally support. And their allies...
Which then you could potentially lose a lot of peons.
Right.
Which is the reason that I like to do what I like to do. I mean, chances are I'm going to be losing peons regardless, because at that point, you know, people can run straight into your base because you're not going to be able to, you know, choke unless you have a ton of grunts, and you can choke to, you know, to the left there like your grunts are right now.
I'll show, for my vantage point, how I would scout 12.
Without being seen.
Yeah. Taking advantage of, we talked about, the vision of the building not being as big as the peon.
Because you'll always, I mean, everybody builds their second farm right there.
So you still got to go farm second, even when you're doing this, from my point of view. Alright, so you're going to inch up here. If you see that farm...
I was delayed on my peon.
Okay, no problem. We'll just pretend that I saw it.
The peon was slightly delayed. I accidentally built my racks first. Whoops. I'm just misplacing shit now. Alright, so at this point, before I build my second barracks when I'm 12, I come down here, and you can see that peon right there, and you can see that you're being towered. And so at this point, you got your one Rex, your Smith. You continue peon production and farm production. Start popping out grunts. You want to put a tower right there, and you want to deny him the ability to continue to tower inside your base and have these two, because these 2 towers you're not going to stop. So you want to be able to protect this cannon tower. And, you know, repping your Smith at this point, but now he can't continue to tower into your base. And so, I mean, pulling your peons and waiting for the first 2 grunts, those 2 towers of his are going to upgrade, and you're not going to be able to stop him with his 2 to 3, 4 peons out there, support, you know, between distracting your units and being able to, you know, to repair. And so, building like this, saving that CT. Now, you can't hit his repairs, but they do take damage if they're directly behind it. They have to be at an angle, which, you know, they can still safely repair this tower. And you don't really want to necessarily send grunts to go after those repairing peons, because you're already delayed, and you want every unit that you can to stay alive, because, you know, they're going to be taking hits. You know, with this build right here, that cannon tower is in range, can hit both those guard towers. Now, those guard towers can both hit the cannon tower at the same time, too, so you will need two repairers. Um, and so you're going to be, repairing both of the with both peons, and you don't necessarily have to wall, and you can block them in with a grunt like that, because a lot of times too, when when an opponent starts getting grunts, they're going to try to tunnel vision on being able to take out that CT, because this is all that they can do. I mean, they can put two more towers, to the left of those two towers right there, but effectively, what is that going to do? It's gonna kill that farm, which will, that's it. But I mean, you're pretty much safe. Like, once they kill that farm, they can start to begin to come inside your base, but you'll have your grunts. So, and that one tower right there isn't really a threat. But once they do kill that farm, they could, I guess, tower in. But then they're heavily committing, and again, like, they can't bring units inside your choke just because that cannon tower is going to kill anything. But that's basically how I deal with getting towered by 2 in a 12-2 war. This also works to say if your opponent is 2 and he's rushing, but his ally comes to tower you, I mean, the timing will be slightly off. You won't be able to see that you're being towered until after your second Rax has already started, more than likely. At that point, don't be scared to cancel your second Rax and then build the cannon tower in its place and cover it with a farm right there. That way, they can't build a tower right here to be reinforced by their other two towers and continue pushing into your base. They're kind of stuck right there. I've done a lot of sick holds, a lot of crazy holds at 12 and 2, using this build just by being able to live and take a lot of damage and take a lot of resources to be withered down and killed. I generally rarely die though. So in a lot of instances, if I feel like I can do damage, or it's better, like in this situation, it's always going to be better to prioritize your grunts over your peons starting out, especially if you're limited on farm space.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because the priority here isn't setting up your economy, it's simply living and taking as many resources from the enemy team for them to be able to try to kill you. I mean, you're trying to divert and delay your death. I mean, a lot of people in this scenario, they'll just roll over and die. I mean, say they see they're being towered, they'll pull all their peons and their grunts. They're not mining, they're losing mining time, and then, next thing you know, half their peons are getting killed, and it's just awful. Doing something like this keeps you a lot safer. It lets you live a lot longer. And, I mean, you might even be able to stay in the game entirely. I mean, if you keep popping out grunts, as long as you can keep popping out grunts, you can live.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And like we were talking about, that is essentially your whole goal in this scenario. Like, you're doing your ally a big service by staying alive. You're still a threat. If you roll over and die, he may be swift and he may be able to 1 versus 2. But if you stay alive, you're a threat. They have to account for you. They can't just build freely. 2 right now is in a pickle. He wants to tech because he doesn't want to fall behind your ally. Let's say your ally is 5. His ally was 9 and was fucking retarded and came to tower you. So the 5 guy is going to get ahead on tech. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And 2 has to worry about that, and you're still alive. So he has to decide, do I want to make cats and try to finish 12, or do I want to try to stay up in tech with 5? And 9's obviously going to be behind because you lived, and he spent so many resources up at 12. So living...
Chances are, 5, if anything, has no defense or maybe a catapult at most. I mean, he's able to tech really fast, and chances are 2 peons stop to be able to support his ally that's towering you. And I mean, they're at an economic disadvantage compared to 5 for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And then you being able to live. Now, the most important thing is just being able to keep the cannon tower alive, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on it. People can do tricks. There's simple little micro tricks that we can talk about. if you were 2 here, the guard towers, they hit quick, they hit fast, and they always hit. They're guaranteed to hit. The cannon tower, I mean, it can miss if there's a unit in range that's moving. It's not really good at hitting moving units. So moving a unit back and forth manually can distract the cannon tower from hitting the guard tower. In case you need to get like say, I send my grunts out to kill the repairing peons. There's another grunt. Somebody has a grunt over there that's distracting the CT from being able to finish off the guard tower. But another trick that people do is unally me. Allying and unallying somebody. Okay, I forgot this guy's in the game still, Paladin. He's just here. He's probably like, what the fuck are these guys doing? And so, essentially, I mean, it's going to be kind of hard to get fucked by this in this situation because this is your base. This is what you're looking at, But say, there's always the trick of allying and unallying somebody. Let's say, for instance, you want to stay focused on these towers, right? And then another enemy has grunts here. And he's doing the thing where he's patrolling the grunt, distracting the CT. What you can do is you can ally that guy temporarily, and then he'll ignore and then your cannon tower, the AI of the cannon tower will ignore that grunt and start focusing back on the on white and the towers that are in range. You got to be careful with that though, and you got to be quick to unally in case he storms in with a bunch of grunts or something like that. But the micro trick of allying certain opponents can be beneficial for sure. But yeah, this is in general how I would defend 12-2 Tower Wars, and as long as you're not taking economic damage, I mean, you still got plenty of peons. You didn't lose any peons necessarily. I mean, white's just lost out on resources, and they will kill both of these farms, but the whole reason for the farm in front of the cannon tower is just to buy you time and to prevent them from pushing further into your base. Eventually, that farm will die. But that's just because there's going to be grunt pressure. I mean, these guard towers are in range of the barracks, but I mean, he's going to not only have these 2 towers. There'll be another tower too that will be able to only reach that farm if he's smart, because that allows him to come in. But that farm has bought you enough time for your cannon tower to fully upgrade and be defensively. And at that point too, you'll want a 3rd peon back here to repair that, but you'll also have grunts too at that point. So combined with the grunts and the tower, it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to continue to push into your base with only, those 2 towers supporting it.
One thing, if you are the support ally, say you came here from 9 and you built these 2 towers here, your ally has grunts, you're able to push in. What you're going to want to do is to completely eliminate that CT from the scenario. So see if you can run back here and get this gay off. If you can get this off, then you're sitting pretty. I mean, you can even farm up top so they can't get back here.
Yeah, and this actually hits the gold flow peons too.
Yep. So this would effectively end that defense. So there are some arguments for moving that CT placement. This one is actually really good though for that 1v1 scenario.
I mean, the CT, it also protects, units in your gold mine, all that stuff.
Yep.
Now, I mean, it's not a, end-all, win-all thing here. I mean, you get tower like that right there. I mean, the likelihood of that happening, though, I mean, I put my farms in that area. So by the point that they are able to do that, I should have 2 or 3 farms over there. If anything, I got a building that is able to be canceled to let me in or something if they try to do that, but...
If you're 12, another thing you'll want to do is, like we told you, you want to live in this scenario. So use your peons to attack those towers.
Use peons that are mining and you got grunts in your peon line. Use your peons, especially if you have at least 1 grunt there. The AI of the enemy grunts is going to focus that grunt. And so you also want to use your peons. Always activate war latency too. Jesus, it helps so much. But... Stop micro. Say you have a grunt. Say your grunt's right here. grabbing all your peons like that and just smashing the S key for stop, it will mess with the enemy AI so bad because they're not going to immediately focus your peons. They're going to be attack moved or patrolled into your base more than likely, and then so that person's units is going to run around all your peons to get to that grunt. Now, the only thing that's going to really suck is splash damage from the cannon tower. You are still going to lose peons in this situation, but you have to stop command and you have to use these peons. And they don't just want to sit there like this. You want to use them in groups and attack. You know, use them to attack, use them to move around. But when somebody's trying to run past your tower range or something like that, and they're trying to get up here, just grab your peons and stop micro.
Also, if you have, say, 2 grunts and that's all you have, you can group them with 2 other peons and use stand ground. You can't grab 4 peons and stand ground, but if you group them with any type of attack unit, a grunt, an ogre, an archer, you can stand ground.
That's a good point too. Yeah, yeah. These simple little nuances in how you play out games makes a huge difference. A lot of people, they don't utilize their peons that are mining. They'll just let them slowly die. Use those peons to attack. They can make such a difference. Even if you're 3 grunts to 1, those enemy grunts, if they're not being manually controlled, they will chase the 1 grunt. And you want to keep switching between your grunts and your peons. If they decide to start attacking the grunt because they're not being manually controlled, put that grunt in a 1v1 scenario with the CT support, and try to use your peons to attack. Just got to stay alive. That's the whole name of the game, buying time.
Yep, and that's only when you're getting towered. I mean,
yeah. I mean, and the good thing about being 2 is that you can't really be towered. Your choke point could be towered, but with the way that you build your buildings at 2, the way that I build them, I mean, you can just put another choke point here. You can put a 5v4 choke point there, or where your lumber mill is. That could be another fallback point.
Yeah,
2 has the advantage of having several fallback points to choke to, and you can actually flower tower like SPB does in that regard. It's very hard to kill 2. A lot harder to kill 2 than it is 12.
Yeah, definitely. And
Yeah,
that's
put
what
units like that.
When I was asking you about your buildings earlier, this is generally where I'll have a smith or a Rex. It just depends on what buildings I dropped.
Now, if I'm in a 4v4 or something like that, I know 12 is hot. I will not, like where you saw where your lumber mill is where my first Rex goes.
Okay, gotcha.
But in a 2v2, I'm assuming that 12's probably not going to be hot, depending on where my ally is. But I like to put my lumber mill there, and I like to have because I mean your town hall is so close to the bottom tree line, and I'm really, really particular about my resource management, and that's another topic that we'll go into eventually, because that's what separates decent good players from the pro players, the best players.
Right.
Is resource management. I mean, you want your lumber mill close to the tree line always, but your town hall is so close to that tree line, and utilizing the lumber mill to be able to take advantage of this stuff. That way you don't have to worry about chopping out underneath too.
Absolutely. Another thing I was going to say is, say you have your choke here where my peons are, and they have more grunts than you. They only have, say, 2. You can see all their grunts. They've got 6. You've got 4. They're going to be aiming to 3v1 that guy right there. So once he falls, pull your units back. Fall back to that secondary choke point, or you should have 2 grunts ready to pop out. Once you get to those 2 grunts, then immediately hit attack or patrol, whatever your preference is, and go back towards them. Because generally they stagger in 1 at a time, 2 at a time. They're never lined up the way yours are going to be lined up when you ran back. So you
want to take your advantage, to get as many hits off and even it out as much as possible.
And then once they have the grunt advantage again, then fall back even more. If you fall back towards where your peons are, sometimes their grunts do get confused. War 2 AI isn't that good, so you can get off an extra 2-3 hits. So when you see guys like me or Eric living with 2 grunts versus like 6, It's because we're using those small tricks. We're getting those extra 2 hits in. We're focusing the weak grunt that they bring in. We're letting their grunts get stuck in our peon line, and we know we're going to lose a peon or two, but that's fine. We're going to live, and we're not going to die to something as simple as like 6 grunts, and we're going to be using our peons to attack those grunts as well. So there's a ton of ways to live. Never just roll over and die.
So this is just what we've been talking about, basically in action.
And you'll see the timing at 12. That peon pops out when that Rax is done, so you can just grab both peons and send them both to gold.
When your 6th peon pops.
Yeah. Alright, so at this point, I have 8
We run it
peons.
through.
Alright, now I'm pulling my grunt back. Oh, you're not. That's pretty funny. So I'm going to put my weak grunt on the far right because I don't want it to take any hits. It's already taken 2 hits. I'm going to protect them by putting them in that corner slot, which is one of the tips that we hadn't talked about, but it just came up in gameplay. Alright, so I've got my 4. I want to come over here and try to break him. I see him, I prepare, and then I go for that middle grunt there. And re-aggro that same middle grunt. And now I've got to pull back because I lost that battle.
Alright, so let's pause for a second. Let's talk about how that battle went, right? So the aggressor in a choke break is always going to have the advantage of being able to focus a single unit even though he's at a disadvantage in numbers, right? So even though it's 3v4, he's able to, focus down one unit real quick, try to break the choke and squeeze into your base. That's the whole point of what he's trying to do, right? And he has the advantage of knowing that I'm doing the same exact strategy as he is. So if you can figure out that your opponent is doing the same exact strategy as you don't really want to throw your grunts away like that. You'll be in a disadvantage unless you can, choke immediately. Then he'll have to do the same thing and have the same losses. But he has the advantage of being able to focus that one unit down and try to squeeze past those grunts before it can be that choke can be reinforced. What a lot of people don't do when they're in the they're the defensive person trying to hold their choke is okay, so say his units were right here again. I would be grouping these grunts, and I would be trying to have all 3 attack, the same unit themselves. You don't necessarily have to do that, and if he pulls back, your grunts will break formation. But that's generally, I'll take 2 or 3 of the grunts and make sure they're focusing at least the same person. Another thing that you want to do too is you constantly want to be, especially with the first 4 grunts that are right there, I always highlight those, especially if I'm just trying to be defensive and I know say there's 2 people with grunts outside my base, I know I'm out grunted. You really want to just highlight those grunts and continuously smash down ground, stand ground. And you don't want to stand ground the grunts that are behind your formation, because then they won't move into place and they'll have an opportunity. That's why a lot of people are bad. They let their choke get broken and then they don't reinforce it immediately. Yeah. Your choke will automatically reinforce as long as you only stand ground those 4 units right there. That's one thing that I do is I never stand ground any of the units behind the choke. Just stand ground those first 4 and just keep doing that, especially every time a new unit comes in to reinforce, re-stand ground again. That way when they go, because they might do a micro trick to try to pull their units back to see, to try to break your formation.
Absolutely. And one thing, the reason why that works is the computer AI obviously doesn't have the input lag. Like, it doesn't have to wait on a command, and it doesn't have that microsecond to move into that spot. So it's automatically, it already has aggro towards the enemy units. It's just waiting for a path to get there. So once that path opens up, that's why they fill that spot immediately. They're just trying to get after the grunts they've already targeted. And then you just re-stand ground like he was talking about. Also, after a war, if you have a split second, you might want to put your weakest grunt on the corners, the edges, where they can't be 3v1'd. And
Yeah,
another,
that makes a huge difference. They get a lot more bang for their buck too, because nobody is going to target. Why would they ever target a 2v1 when they could do a 3v1 with the middle two grunts?
right. And here's another trick that I don't see a lot of people use, but it's actually quite nice when you're doing a peace stop. If you have a grunt that has 4 HP and you're sitting there at 17 of 17 units, kill
Kill it.
that grunt,
Kill
make
it.
2 new grunts and a new peon. You get 3 units for the price of 4 HP. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that a lot of people don't take advantage of. And they wonder why they're out grunted. They're like, I'm at 17 of 17. How do they have more grunts? How
Yeah,
are they
I'm
healthier?
doing this right. I'm doing this right.
Yeah.
There's just simple little nuances that separate good players from great players, and that's what this series is going to be about helping you guys understand and utilize these simple little tricks to progress your game. All right, so I'm gonna unpause and we'll just play out this battle a little bit, and I'll come try to break your choke here in a second. You ready?
Yep.
All right.
It's kind of different with vision on, knowing what's coming.
Yeah, I know, right? All right, so I obviously know he's going to have less grunts than me. So at that point, you would try to pull back, right? You would try to pull back and try to break his formation, but obviously he knows what we just talked about.
So you never want to get stuck back there. Now, when he's running back, don't target his units. Don't let him form a choke. Go to where you think he's going to be choking because you have more
Run
units.
past, yeah, run past.
And this is why he
Right.
can't set up his choke. And now I've
And
got...
not only that, okay, let's pause and talk. There's something that also needs to be talked about when you're in a 12-2 war. People in this game are, when they have won a battle, they are simply too focused on trying to do economic damage. If you have 3 to 4 grunts left over in a battle and they're all below or around half HP or less, the last thing you want to do is send those grunts into somebody's peon line. They're not going to do damage. They're not going to kill many peons. The peons are going to be able to use to attack those grunts, and then they're just dead grunts. You want to focus your units on the barracks. You want to keep your units on the barracks and keep stuff. You don't want to let him pull units to be able to bounce back, right? You want to keep your units attacking the grunts coming out of the barracks. All the fresh units. 4 red HP units will wipe 2 units that are popping out. Especially if you're choked around the barracks, it'll wipe it out so fast before the second grunt can even help do damage. So always focus the barracks and the production first. Don't unless you got 9 grunts left over, don't worry about the economy. Focus on the production. Stop the production. Because then what? He can't build anything at that point. So his economy that he has is useless, right?
So what he's talking about there is you're growing your advantage rather than throwing it away. Say you do have those 3v1 grunts, even if your grunts are half HP. When that grunt pops out and 3 grunts are hitting him, it's like for your grunt to hit mine twice, I'm getting 6 hits on yours, and that's it. Your grunt's going to be toast pretty quick. And in the meantime, I'm bringing over 2 more grunts that are fresh.
Yeah. Rallying the reinforcements over to the base.
So even
and then
if
you're constantly just doing that, building your advantage.
Yep. If you manage to kill one of my 3 grunts that I had in your base, but I bring in 2, now I'm 4v1, where I was 3v1 the prior round. I build that up until I can kill your economy, rather than just throwing it away.
Because too many people do that, and then the battle resets, right? It resets. Even though you won that single battle, the whole war is reset now, and now it's even again. Even if you did manage to kill 1 or 2 peons, it's really not that big of a deal. You can bounce back from that really, really quickly. So it's definitely not worth it to try to go for the economy with your leftover grunts from a battle in a 12-2 war. Camp the production and then stop him from being able to bounce back and finish the battle and finish the war right then and there, right?
Yep.
I think that pretty much covers everything.
Yeah, that should cover 12-2. If you can't become a good 12-2 player after all the tips we've given you today, then maybe you should just leave games when you get 12-2. But no, seriously, you've got all the tools now that we have when we play 12 versus 2 wars. You'll be a whole lot more formidable than anybody else who hasn't watched these videos. And we're going to keep bringing you this series over and over. I mean, every spot you will have no more questions when we're done. You will be answering
Basically.
Questions.
I'm trying to think if we do have any questions or any other little secrets about 12-2, or not necessarily secrets, but just, little tricks. I mean, not really, right? That's pretty much everything.
Yeah. One last thing. When we were talking about that 4v3 at 2's entrance and you put your weak grunts on the side, before you attack, if you know that you weaken some of his grunts, touch each one of his grunts before you attack and see what their health is. Attack the one with the low health. If it has 4 HP, you're going to get in one hit.
Yeah, that's true too. Always check enemy unit HP when you have the time, especially if it's not interfering with like your, I know not every player has, high APM or whatever, but I mean I know it's kind of hard to do mid battle or something like that. Check enemy HP grunts, but say you're in a standoff and it's choke versus choke, you have time to look at enemy grunts HP to be able to, if you want to break that choke, figure out which grunt you want to attack. I mean, even if there's a 4 HP unit on the side, still though, it's really hard to reinforce or to get past a unit that's on the side, even if you do kill it in one hit.
Right on.
Especially if there's a choke right behind it. But yeah, I think the important things, especially in the choke war, is just stand grounding the units that are in the formation, not the units behind the formation. That's really crucial.
Absolutely.
That way you automatically reinforce and they can't get past.